Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on a special edition of CollabTalk. Today we have Jesse Yerger. Jesse is our quality assurance officer as well as collaborator. He wears many hats outside of collaborative ABA services. To talk to you more about who Jesse is a board certified behavior analyst. He's also an international behavior analyst and licensed behavior analyst in Utah and Connecticut. He's earned his undergraduate degree from Utah State University in 2011 and his master's degree from Auburn University in 2012. Jesse is the co-founder of multiple service-oriented businesses that collaboratively provide behavior analytic support to individuals with disabilities, autism diagnostic services, daycare for children with autism and their siblings, and ethical billing practices. Additionally, Jesse serves as president-elect for the Utah Association for Behavior Analysts and will assume the role of president in September of this year. He is also the creator and host of the Autism Navigation Pod. Jesse's professional interests include organizational business management, toileting, and of course, our topic today, healthy sleep practices. So, to kind of give a background of healthy sleep practices, just to give you guys a little bit more about this topic, between 50 to 80% of autistic individuals struggle with sleep related challenges. And most commonly, these challenges relate to falling asleep, waking up throughout the night, and also inadequate duration of sleep. This discussion will be centered on providing those strategies to help care for children and adolescents who struggle with sleep. And these strategies are also going to be designed to empower caregivers to promote enhanced bedtime routines, sleep without a parent or caregiver, remain in bed throughout the night, and also work towards a desirable bedtime routine. Welcome, Jesse.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited. I've seen a couple episodes. Glad to be on a special edition. Um, yeah, I got interested in sleep-related things or using behavioral strategies to help with sleep after my own children humbled me quite a bit. Um, the very first night that I had them after graduating grad school when I was on top of the world and felt like uh, I could do anything behaviorally. They showed me very quickly that I was in fact not able to do everything. So it was a good kind of wake up call for me to look into sleep stuff and specializing in sleep challenges for really all kids. But I've applied that in practice to oftentimes kids with autism and their families. So I'm excited to be here today. There are a couple different things that we look at or that we see commonly. You mentioned 50 to 80% of kids on the spectrum struggle with sleep-related activities. So we see issues with kind of developing and maintaining a consistent bedtime routine. That's really helpful for everyone. Fading out parents or caregivers, we call that co-sleeping. Um, Providing attention on a schedule is another option, and that's oftentimes really helpful for kids who get out of bed frequently. One of the other things we can do for kids who get out of bed frequently is use the bedtime pass system. And then finally, there's a gradual bedtime change. So when bedtime's too late, sometimes we can use it for too early as well. But I typically see kids going to bed too late or parents wanting to kind of like move that bedtime to a earlier time. So the first one we'll talk about is a consistent bedtime routine. I'm going to have some things related to like the actual procedure. With a consistent bedtime routine, it's helpful because it really gets the body and the brain ready to go to sleep because it's the same every night. So it may not work the first time you try it because there's no like learning history and getting ready to go to sleep. Um, some of the kind of procedural things or the things to consider when creating that bedtime routine is make sure it's doable, it's feasible, it works within your family construct. Um, the other thing is there's a concept called behavior momentum. And basically, it's like when somebody says yes or does something, they're more likely to do the next thing. So the first thing that we want to do with a bedtime routine is make it something that's easy, that the kid's going to like to do, and get a little bit of that momentum. So then we can go into things that are maybe like less preferred, like brushing teeth or actually getting into bed. We want to make sure that the following activities after that first activity are kind of like calming and just conducive to getting ready basically to go to sleep. And this is the hard part, but ideally it'll stay consistent every night, because anytime there's a change in routine, especially when we're talking about kids who oftentimes have a little rigidity or like struggle to go to bed at a consistent time, or struggle to do maybe like anything if it's outside of that uh, normal routine, it can make it a lot more difficult. So we want to do everything that we possibly can to keep it consistent every night, understanding that like sometimes there's like fireworks at night, and sometimes bed's going to be a little bit different. But to the extent that we're able to do everything that we can to kind of keep that consistent. So here's a quick example. Light snack, you'll notice that at the beginning, that's something that like most kids are going to be willing to do. It's pretty easy. After that, it kind of makes sense to brush teeth and get pajamas on, talk about the day. For like my kids when they were younger, we would have the same thing every time. So we would talk about, I would tell them the three things that I was proud of them for that day. I would then have them tell me their favorite part of the day, let them know what I was excited about for tomorrow. So it's all very positive. There's no like corrective feedback or anything like that. And then the last thing I would say to them is, I promise I'll never stop loving you. Lights out, leave the room. And then we do that over and over again. So that worked over time. But that story I shared at the beginning, where they just did not want to go to bed the first couple nights after grad school, especially when they were really young. But this helped and worked, progressively. I would say within like a couple weeks, but obviously it got better, a little bit better every night until it got to the point where it was a well-oiled machine. So here's some extra like kind of considerations, things to think about. Um, we humans, people, probably animals too, sleep better when our body temperature is lower. So if there's a way to do kind of work into your routine to do the bath, the shower, the cleanliness stuff, where it might raise body temperature earlier in the day, that's great. If you have to do it at night, it's not a huge deal. We can still incorporate that into a bedtime routine. I would maybe recommend doing something that's like a little bit less like warm. Like if you can do like room temperature or lukewarm, that's great. But we want to kind of keep that body temperature a little bit lower so that it makes it easier to go to sleep. Physical activity is important. I'm going to pull up both of these here, but we want to kind of have that be throughout the day or a couple hours before bedtime, and not right before bedtime, because then the heart rate's up and we have a little bit a state of more excitement physiologically. So it's more helpful, more conducive to sleep if we can kind of like limit uh, strenuous physical activity to the extent we're able to, within like an hour before bed. And then finally, and this is the one that's difficult, especially for a lot of the kids that I work with and their families, is limit screen time to the extent that we're able to. About an hour before bed, all that like blue light and stuff like that can also make it more difficult for sleep to happen. So these are just some considerations. If we're not able to do some of these, it doesn't mean that like you can't have a bedtime routine. It doesn't mean that there's like no hope or anything that you can do. These just make the routine a little bit work a little bit faster. So we got our bedtime out of the way, or our bedtime routine out of the way. And one of the biggest things that I think I hear from parents is called co-sleeping, or where a kid needs a parent there, a caregiver to be comfortable falling asleep. And I think this is a good opportunity to talk about how sleep is really more of a skill than anything else. If you think about things like Christmas morning, kids are up at 5 a.m., they're ready to go, open up all their presents. But I don't think we always think about sleep as a skill, or sleeping independently as a skill. And so I think it's important to kind of conceptualize sleep that way. Whereas if it's school or something that's a little bit less preferred, a doctor's appointment where there's going to be shots, or something else that's not fun, people can sleep all day long, to kind of avoid that. So really think about sleep as a skill, especially sleeping independently. Um, the other thing is a lot of times kids will get out of bed at night frequently, even if they fall asleep early. And if they're not learning to fall asleep on their own, I think the average person wakes up like between 8 and 10 times a night. We don't remember it because most of us are falling asleep independently. But if the person has not learned to fall asleep without somebody else there, they're going to be getting up constantly and needing that person, to go back to bed with them and fall asleep. So here are some strategies. These are kind of a slow burn approach. There's faster ways to do it. Um, but oftentimes we see tantrums or other difficult behavior, and that can also get heart rate up and kind of goes back to making it difficult to fall asleep again. So here's the slow burn approach. um and also keep in mind these are kind of general steps, so like there may be something you may be working with a behavior analyst who's recommending something else. If that's the case, follow those procedures or those guidelines as well. But just in general, we want to just start one step beyond the current sleeping arrangement. So uh, if a child is maybe needs the parent to, as in the picture in the back, needs them to be like right there with them, then we might start by having the parent sit on the edge of the bed and like scratch the child's back or play with their hair or something like that that's calming. That's like one step removed from where the kid's currently at. After 2 or 3 nights, then we'll go to like a next step. So they might be like sitting next to the bed or something like that. Then we would kind of rinse and repeat. After 2 or 3 more successful nights, then we would go one step further, maybe scoot further away. And so what we're really doing is making it comfortable for the child so they're still able to fall asleep, but also we're working towards that independent sleep schedule. Eventually, we want to be outside of the room. So here's just like a quick example, kind of like what I was mentioning earlier. So if the kid's in the needs the parent to kind of like lay down with them, they'll sit next to the child, then in a chair next to the bed, and then we'll scoot the chair maybe 2 feet, then 6 feet, then 10 feet away from the bed, maybe eventually standing in the doorway and then being right outside the door. And there's also like a good opportunity to include what we're going to be talking about after this slide. I'll go back real quick, where we can incorporate like some attention like on a schedule, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. That can be a good thing to kind of pair with this. This again is not like a overnight procedure. This is going to take a little bit of time. Sometimes it's a little bit effortful, but if we're already sleeping with with a child already, we're at least like working towards something, and maybe we have a little more independence. Maybe the parent's able to get some stuff done on their phone or whatever they need to do, and be able to just kind of like increase that distance from the kid. There are a few like extra considerations, or maybe tips is a better word. It's fine if it takes a little bit. It's okay to kind of fade out a little bit within that same bedtime. Usually we're talking about each night, but like if the kid's comfortable with you sitting in a chair right next to the bed, then maybe like scoot it back or go to the bathroom and come back and move the chair another foot back or something. So it's okay to kind of play around with it, see what the child's comfortable with, and really try to just continue promoting that solid sleep um, routine. Um, it's okay. Real life happens. Sometimes you're gonna have to take a step back. Sometimes, like maybe bedtime's a little bit later, real life happens. Maybe you didn't get home until late. So if you have to take a step back and be a little bit closer, or you're not undoing anything that you've done over the last week or couple days. So just know that like it's okay if there's a night where you have to step back. But I want to encourage families to just do that, give in early, just say like it's fine, we're just going to get through the day, and then go back to where you were the previous night. and then incorporate this attention on the schedule. So it's exactly what it sounds like. A lot of times kids will um, need attention from a parent or a caregiver, sometimes a sibling, in order to feel comfortable going to bed. So like I think the classic one is coming out and saying like, "Oh, I'm thirsty. I want a glass of water." And like 9 times out of 10, that kid's not really thirsty, right? They just want a little bit of extra mom time or dad time. And so, what we can do to mitigate some of that is give them attention on a schedule. So, the first thing that we do is figure out how long it takes the child to come out of bed after they're tucked in on average. So, I'll kind of go through an example on the next slide, but um, this is important because basically our goal is to beat them to the punch, to go give them attention before they feel like they need to get out of bed to get that attention. So they know it's coming consistently. And so they're less likely to do stuff, get out of their comfortable bed with their stuffed animals or whatever to go get attention. So just before that kid's likely to get out of bed, we're going to go give them attention. That might be scratching their back and might say, "Hey, just checking on you. Thanks for staying in your bed." Anything like that is all great. And then we kind of repeat that until the child falls asleep. And it might take a while, especially if a child's not used to sleeping on their own. Um, but this at least gives the parents or caregiver, whomever, a little bit of time to go either take care of other siblings or have some like quality time with their significant other or whatever that might be. And then we gradually start providing attention on a less dense schedule, so less soon, I guess. So, excuse me. We'll kind of go through an example on the next slide. But for example, if you're providing attention or you're coming in and checking on them every 5 minutes, then it might bump to every 6 and then every 8 or something like that, so that we can get them used to having longer and longer periods of time without somebody coming in while still knowing that somebody is coming back. So here's an example. So let's say a kid's getting out of bed about 2 minutes after getting tucked in. We're going to have the parent go in at like 90 seconds. And then they'll say, "Just checking on you, whatever, whatever." They'll be there for like 15, 30 seconds, something like that. And then they'll leave the room again. And it's fine to come up with like some natural things like, "Oh, I have to check on your brother," or "I need to go to the bathroom," or "I don't know if I turned the oven off." Something that's like not just like, "I'm leaving you now," but it's fine to make that purposeful. We do that for 2 to 3 nights until the kid's only getting out of bed one time or not at all. And then we'll cut back to like 3 minutes for like a couple nights, and then maybe 5, and then 7, et cetera, until the child's really falling asleep on their own, and we can get it to a more reasonable time frame. If that doesn't work, there's also, and this is one of my favorites, there's a procedure called bedtime passes. And I'm a huge fan of this one. So, bedtime passes, we do the same thing. We figure out how many times the kid's getting out of bed instead of how many or how soon after bedtime the kid's getting out of bed. We create like a hall pass. It's cool if the kids like involved in this process or making their own. But this basically allows the child to get out of bed for 5 minutes with no like consequences, no anything. They can just be out of the bedroom. Um, we want to give them as many hall passes as that amount of times that they're getting out of bed that we determine, or the average amount of time over the course of a couple of days. And then they can get attention, they can hang out, they can do something as long as it's calming and not screen time, I would recommend each time they use the pass. And then remind them that they have to like turn it in. So it's like they're buying something. This is their currency that allows them to get out of bed. And then there's no reaction, no attention, just kind of a neutral guiding them back to bed if they try to get out of bed without a hall pass. And this is why it's really important to determine how many times they're getting out of bed so we can give them adequate numbers of hall passes throughout the process. And then what we do to fade this out is we either make the hall passes worth less time. So now it's like 4 minutes and then three, or we can give them fewer and fewer hall passes. It just kind of depends on what the child can tolerate as far as like the change goes. Um, and then here's a quick example. So if the kid's getting out of bed 5 times, make some cool hall passes. They can get out of bed, they can exchange at least 5 of them each night. If they, after they use all 5, that's 25 extra minutes. They get 5 minutes for each time they hand in a hall pass. If they get out of bed for a 6th time, then there's no really reaction. We just kind of guide them back to bed after 2 successful nights. So on that 3rd night, then we'll scale it back to 4 hall passes. And after 2 more successful nights, we'll go to 3 hall passes, and so on and so forth. You kind of get the gist. What tends to happen is these hall passes become very valuable to the child. So they'll kind of a lot of times naturally space out how often they're using their bedtime passes, and so they'll maybe like fall asleep before they use all of them, and that's our ideal situation. If it doesn't quite work like that, then it's okay if we lose one, or if they only have 4, or if we just make them worth a little bit less time. And then we have gradual bedtime change. So this is where our kids are going to bed later than what we would like, or later than maybe what's age appropriate. This procedure involves just figuring out the average time that they're going to bed. And then we set a very strict bedtime based on that time. So if they're going to bed at 1 a.m., then we're going to start this actually at 1 o'clock a.m. And this one, as indicated in the title, is kind of a gradual procedure. We still complete that bedtime routine, and then we reset after a little bit of success. We reset that bedtime to 15 minutes earlier. So in the example I gave, they go down to 12:15, or sorry, 12:45 a.m., and just get it back to, over the course of time, maybe a month, get it back to like 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 8, whatever time is feasible um, for the family and the child. And then we just kind of rinse and repeat until we get there. So here's an example. So maybe a parent records what time the child goes to sleep for 1 week, not necessarily the time they get into bed, but what time they actually go to sleep. So let's say it's 12:30, then our bedtime is 12:30 a.m. That's our goal. Uh, we still stick with that bedtime routine. We're successful for a couple days. We bump it back to 12:15, and then we kind of go on and on until we hit midnight, and then 11:45, 11:30, and so on and so forth. There is a version of this that's like a bonus or on steroids a little bit. So a gradual bedtime change can be really helpful. If or maybe like extra helpful if we use some of these strategies, which are not always feasible, but if we can use all or some of these, it might make the process go a little bit faster. So if a child does get out of bed after that set bedtime, it's okay. And this one, only use this one if you can follow the rest of the bullet points that are on this slide. Um, but if they get out of bed, then it's okay. Keep them up for 30 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that, and then have them go back to bed. You don't have to do the bedtime routine again. They would just go back to bed. But this is why it's important. We're going to keep a consistent wake up time. So whatever time that they're getting up, it doesn't matter if it's weekends or holidays or whatever. We want to make sure they're waking up at that consistent time, no matter what, and kind of play off of the natural desire to go to sleep for the next night. That also means we have to eliminate or discourage naps if at all possible. And when that nighttime comes, let's say our desired bedtime is 9 o'clock. If the child gets tired at 9 o'clock, it's okay if they go to bed. You don't have to keep them up until whatever our scheduled time is. So let's say it's 12:30. That child can go to bed anytime between 9 p.m. and 12 o'clock p.m., as long as we're keeping that consistent wake up time and eliminating naps. So It was a quick and dirty kind of overview of like some sleep things. Go get that well-deserved sleep. You deserve it too. As a parent, it can be really hard and taxing as well. If you have a child who's not sleeping or has any of the sleep challenges that we talked about, obviously there are other sleep challenges as well. I like to recommend these couple of books here. A couple of them are just general sleep books, and then another one is specifically for children with autism. You're also more than welcome to reach out to me directly. My email's here, and I'd be happy to advise or help out however is useful. So hopefully this has been helpful. And Alicia, I think you mentioned that there are a couple questions that were addressed or that were sent, and I'd be happy to kind of answer any of those as well.
Yes. Thank you so much for the informative information, Jesse. This was very helpful, even for me as a parent. Thank you very much. So, there were some questions. One of the questions that I have is, when should I reach out to my pediatrician with sleep concerns?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think it's a really personal decision. So I think if you're seeing things like the child's not like being successful at things that they have the skill to do, or if they're really burning out towards the end of the day, and you're seeing like more reactive behavior than you maybe normally would, or than you do at the beginning of the day, if you're seeing academics kind of slip or get worse than what they currently or typically are, I think those are all indications that it could be helpful to go to or maybe present those issues to a pediatrician. And I think the other thing is like there's not really like a bad time to bring that up to your pediatrician as well. So if you're just even if you just kind of have that parental instinct where you're like, my kid's not sleeping, or I feel like this could be better. I think it's totally appropriate to bring that up during, a checkup, or maybe bring them in for a special, special like a meeting specifically about sleep as well.
Awesome. I have a question as well. Do you have any recommendations for families to help them help their child be comfortable with other family members putting them to bed?
Uh, I do. Pretty common. I think it goes a lot with like co-sleeping, with kind of that first procedure that we talked about. So what happens a lot of times is we see that kids can be a little bit particular about their bedtime routine, and sometimes that means it's not only the activities but the person who's helping them with those activities. And so one of the ways or the strategies to kind of get them comfortable with, let's say, like dad putting them to bed, or babysitter or grandma putting them to bed, can be to have that person just simply be there during the bedtime routine. So they're then associating the bedtime routine not only with that person that they've got it down with, but also with that other person. And then over time, maybe have the person that we're incorporating or that we're teaching the child to be comfortable with, do like some of the fun parts of bedtime routine, and then do maybe like the majority of bedtime routine, and then kind of like flop the person who's putting them to bed to kind of like mirror the way we started. So like a mom's putting a kid to bed and we're trying to incorporate dad, then we have dad at the end of this kind of procedure, have mom be there, but dad's running everything, and then eventually like fade mom out. And that can be a little bit of a lengthy process. I'd still recommend the 2 to 3 like good or successful nights before kind of moving to whatever that next step is, or further incorporating the other person. But that's one way that we can kind of get kids comfortable with somebody else putting them to bed.
Thanks. Another question I have is, what things are okay for my child to sleep with?
Now, there's a lot of opinions on this, and I think it's a also a very personal decision. My um, kind of recommendation to most of my families is like one or two things. It doesn't really matter exactly what they are. Obviously, for obvious reasons, I would recommend something like soft, like a stuffed animal, or like a special blanket, or anything that makes that child comfortable when going to sleep, whether it's physically or just like mentally, emotionally. But I think typically what I see is um, families be successful with one or two things. Any more than that, we might run into some of that rigidity again, where this stuffed animal has to be in this corner of the bed and this one has to be there, and if it slips, then it's challenging. So I would recommend one or two, and if you can kind of switch up where those things are, even better. And if they're soft, best.
Thank you so much, Jesse, again for your time and sharing this valuable information with us. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this special edition episode of Collab Talk. If you found this information valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss an episode. Got thoughts or questions? Drop them in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, let's keep this conversation going, especially about healthy sleep practices. To learn more about collaborative ABA services, check us out on our website at collaborativavaservices.com and additional social media pages, including Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and one other one,
TikTok.
TikTok. Yes. Thank you. And have a good one, everyone.